I just tried some stuff and it didn't work at all. So I'm going to try something else. No practice, and I'm just going to accept this. Hey, it might work, it might not. That's what this is all about, is taking some risks and just trying to salvage something, trying to figure out if you can learn something new. So let's try something that I've not tried yet. I'm going to select an anchor point, any anchor point, it doesn't matter. And then go up to select, same, fill and stroke. And now we got all the anchor points selected. And again, I can hit delete to prove to you they're all selected. Hit Command Z to undo. They're still all selected. Now, right now, notice they have no fill and they have a big 7-pixel stroke. So what if we took this up and say up to 20? Now that's huge. That's crazy huge. But I don't want a 20-pixel stroke. I want a fill with a very small stroke. But in order to do this, because this thing is all stroke, I need to expand these. So with, again, all the anchor points are selected, I'm going to come up to Object, Expand, and this ellipses, the 3 circles, means I'm going to get a dialog box. And this dialog box says, hey, what do you want to expand? And fill and stroke are set to expand, and yes, I want to do that. So when I do that, watch this. See the stroke's 20 pixels, and you got no fill and a black stroke. As soon as I click OK, Illustrator's going to think for a second, because there's a lot of those guys out there. You can tell by how intense these highlights are. And notice that I have a question mark for the fill and no stroke whatsoever. So let's select the fill, double click on it to see why it's a question mark, and we really don't know. It's set to white for some reason. And to tell you the truth, I want a white fill. And I want to add a black stroke to this, but I want to add a little tiny black stroke. So when I click OK, watch what happens to all of those shapes, because they're no longer anchor points. They are shapes, and each one of them is a circle. And now with the stroke active, I can double click on the stroke, make sure black is selected, and look at that. It's already selected. Click OK. And it's set to 1 pixel, but I want to go down to that 0.25. I want to match my line weight with these strokes. And voila, oh, it's set to white, so let's change that. There's no black here, so let's double click on our white stroke and make sure it is black. There we go. And now when we deselect, we have something a little different. Now, I can think of a dozen different ways to make this better, but right now this is not so objectionable anymore. It actually has some visual interest. So I'm going to select everything by hitting Command A. That selects everything here, and Command C copies. Then jump over to Photoshop. You got to learn this, man. I'm holding down the Command key with my thumb and tapping with my ring finger to move down the open apps. If I go too far, I can Shift tap to go backwards. Cool. And I get to Photoshop, and this is my miserable don't save attempt that I didn't like. So let's hit Command N to open up a new document. And by default, you get what was selected. It's 1020 pixels. Now, Instagram takes 1080 by 1080, so this is small, and I want to crop it somewhat. So we can come up and make a custom document. So I'm going to come over to Web, make a custom document. First thing I want to do is deselect artboards. Don't worry about the title, because I'm going to show you a tricky way to name this thing correctly that has a gotcha in it, but that'll do it. And then I want to change the width and height, say 3,000 pixels for right now, 3,000, not 300. And because we're in the web, we're set in RGB, white background. This is all perfect. Let's go ahead and create that. And now I'm going to hit the letter V to get out of the crop tool, because that's where I was prior to this. Now we can hit Command V, which will paste our copied Illustrator file. We want this to be a smart object, not pixels. Trust me. Why? Because a smart object is all vectors. And this thing was, remember, 1020 by 1020 pixels? That's too small. We can resize this. But watch, don't do this. Don't squish it. Don't stretch it. Hold down Shift in order to resize and constrain the proportions. I've not let go of the mouse button, and I've not let go of Shift, but I'm going to add Option to Shift, and that will resize from the center. And that way we can get this out and it will fit nicely in our available work area. And I'm going to go past a little because I don't want that outer edge. I didn't like that at all. Get it to the size we want and click OK. Now, you probably have something different than mine, but if you followed these same steps, you're looking at those anchor points as big circles, and you're looking at something that has far more visual interest than that hideous thing we started with. Now, do we want this entire area? I'm thinking maybe somewhere in here is something a little more interesting. So if we get the crop tool, and the crop tool is the letter C. I don't even know where these things are because I just hit the letter C when I want the crop tool. So practice that. Hit the letter C, and you can see it selects the visible area, the background, not the outer area of our smart object, which is slightly bigger than our artboard. And then the settings for the crop tool are here, and because I've been working for Instagram, and this is a square to start with, I make sure this is 1:1. So now I don't have to hold down anything to make this stay a perfect square. It does that. And you can see if I hit Escape and then click to activate the crop tool, you can see this smart object is still sitting there outside our canvas, our document. I'm going to grab one of these handles, hold down Option and Shift, and resize from the outside in. And then, because this is vertical, and I think being on an angle might give us a little more visual interest. Now I can select 12.7, or I can hold down Shift to jump to 15 degrees, or jump to 30. And this is a judgment call. You go ahead and find what you like, and then say, you know, this could be a little smaller here, and, you know, fit to size. This ring goes off the edge. If you click in the center, then you can move this and adjust on the fly and decide what is it that works for you. Should it go a little ways off? Should a little more be exposed? What works for you? And yeah, this isn't really symmetrical anymore. It doesn't really, you know, follow any distinct pattern. How is our balance established? So we move this around, find something you like, and then hit return. After this does its thinking, and it's taking longer because it's working with a smart object and it's preserving all of that smart object on the outer edge. But because our Illustrator file has all our information, and you saw how that slowed things down, if we merge down, Command E, right click, there it is, merge down, or if you want to see the shortcut, right here in the hamburger menu, if you didn't see that, I'm in the layers panel, click on the hamburger menu, merge down has the Command E visible for you. And Command E is a shortcut I use all the time. And then Command 1 shows us what we've got at actual size. And is this great? Well, no, but it certainly is more visually interesting than anything we've had up to this point. So right now, last thing, I want to save this file. You don't have to do Save As because Photoshop knows that this is not the file it started with. Okay, so it's going to default. It should default. If it didn't take you there, go ahead and click on Images, and then come down, and you're going to find the FineLine Images folder because we've been using it. And if all else fails, you can go into Documents and into FineLine and into Images, and then scroll down to this AI file. If you click on it, watch, right now this says JPEG, and that's because the last time I used this dialog box, I had a JPEG set, and there's only one layer here, so Photoshop's saying, hey, maybe he wants a JPEG. If there were multiple layers, it would say Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Illustrator, that file, but notice Photoshop changes to .ai. The way to change this is not to type it. It's to click on this, and if Photoshop was selected, you would need to reselect it. See, because if I click on this and it said Photoshop, now it says AI, you just click, and Photoshop adds the .psd. Click Save. Now, there's a bazillion other things we could do to this inside Photoshop, but for right now, our file is saved. Let's come back into FineLine and let me just talk about a few of the settings, and then you will be free to experiment. But remember, taking this file into Illustrator and doing those steps to give these lines thickness and to adjust however the points appear and the rest of it, these are all crucial steps in order to prepare your file to jump into Photoshop. Because with FineLine, if you drop the PDF on top of Photoshop rather than Illustrator, these lines are very faint, and it's difficult to see anything other than where the lines are dense and packed together. So practice these skills. I can't tell you how important that is. And have fun with this, because every single generative image is different and unique. You will never have two of the same. Well, unless you have very primitive settings and wind up getting lucky, or unlucky, as the case may be. That's the whole thing about generative imagery. You are creating something new and original that's never been seen before. And then what you do with it after it's been produced is where the artistry comes in.